see. Hi, everybody. My name's Nancy. I'm an alcoholic. And boy, I am glad to be here today. I like Step 11 meetings too. That wasn't always the case. But I really do like Step 11 meetings. It's kind of interesting, and I thought a little bit today about why I like them. You know, I like most AA meetings. No matter what's going on, you know, sometimes, you know, the microphone goes around and people are rambling, but you usually always find someone at the meeting has a kind of thoughtful idea to present on sobriety. Or, you know, sometimes people seem stuck on their problems, but someone will always bring it back to the solution, and that's a good thing. And sometimes, you know, people seem to take themselves and their problems like really, really seriously. But whenever that happens, there's always somebody in an AA meeting, I love it, who has a wicked sense of humor and can laugh at themselves. So, you know, you find all this stuff at AA meetings. But it's true. When we come to AA meetings, we talk about serious stuff. We really do. Our lives, a lot of it isn't pretty. Our pasts, you know, and it can really be painful, and especially when we talk about the steps and go through the steps. You know, what it takes for us to get here is a lot of struggle and failure, and, you know, eventually you have to feel hopeless and demoralized, or you're not going to stay. We all know that. Once you get on the other side of that a little bit, it doesn't seem like that anymore. But when you get here, that's sure how it feels. And then, you know, the next couple of steps, there's a lot of doubt and indecision. And, you know, we're uneasy with our relationships, relationship with a higher power. Some of us don't even like to talk about it. Many people don't even like to use the word God. We're sort of negotiating all that. And then, you know, we get to 4 and 5 and we get to you know, look how our lives looked and all the problems in our lives and you know, as it showed up in terms of our anger and our fear. It's hard stuff. And then, you know, we go through 6 and 7, which is mainly trial and error. That's what we do, trial and error in daily living. And then in 8 and 9, we get to look back and about all confronting the relationships that we have that are really broken and painful. And there's a lot of angst involved in that. So, you know, we have to deal with all this stuff. We have to talk about it all. It's a necessary part of the examination of our lives. But when we finally get to 11, something different is going on. You know, we're looking for something else. We're looking for some kind of peace. You know, some kind of peace. Where are we going to find it? How are we going to find it? Some kind of peace. And so I find that 11-step meetings usually have that element in them. How people find some peace, some inner peace, despite all the stuff that's going on in the outside world. So, you know, it's taken me a long time to feel really comfortable talking about this step and the practice that I have and what I do. And where I like to start with it is just an idea I have about most of us, mainly myself. And this idea is that you know, we're not present most of the time. We're not here. We're somewhere else. We're lost in our lives. We're almost never here. We're lost in the stories about our family and ourselves and the stuff we did and how other people treated us and all our losses and disappointments. We ruminate over that and you know and all the unfairness of life and then, you know, thinking about what's going to happen in our fantasies and our dreams and expectations about people and the future and stuff. And we're just not here. We're somewhere else. We're in the past. We're in the future. And we build elaborate defenses in an unconscious way. I mean, it's a pretty human thing to do, to protect ourselves from unpleasant, upsetting, disturbing thoughts. I know I do. You know, have defensive emotions. You know, when something disturbing happens, I might go right to anger, you know, and feel justifiable anger and stuff like that. But, you know, I'm not there. I'm often something else. I have a lot of compulsive kind of thinking. I don't know if you do. But when something upsets me, I'll get the same kind of thought. I'll push it through over and over and over again. The point that I'm trying to make is that all this stuff going on is mainly outside of my awareness. I mean, I didn't decide to think about it. It just like comes up for me. And so I feel like for myself, the way my mind works and just the way I am, I'm rarely here right now. With the people that I'm with and doing what I'm doing. I'm a lot of different places while I'm sitting here. And in addition to that, we pretty much keep ourselves distracted in our lives. We devote our life energy, all of us do, to the demands of the outside world. And there are many of them. The money, the house, the kids, the parents, the job, the lovers, the partners, politics, world problems. We never run out of the problems on the outside world. Even in our neighborhoods, we have too many peacocks. It's a big deal, just all kinds of problems, And so, we come to AA and we're told repeatedly that we can live differently. We're not sure what that means, that we can still experience the family, the jobs, the health, and deal with it all, but live from a different place, from a different perspective. And that is what we learn to do here. But in order to do it consistently, I need to find some kind of anchor within myself. I need to find some kind of center. I need to find some kind of center that I can trust, some place to go, some message that's constant, some guidance that always works. You can call 12 different people, but eventually it's my inner wisdom that I'm going to try and look for. So, we're told here that there's a place inside each of us that we can go to that has this peace. But when I came in, I listened to that and I said, well, what the heck does that mean? I've been thinking my whole life. I've never found anything, and I've read a whole lot of books, and I don't know what you're talking about. So we're looking for something inside of us. That thing that's referred to in the appendix of the big book. That unsuspected inner resource. What would that be? What would it look like? So if you could just humor me for a minute, this is the way my mind works. I'm thinking, well, what does that mean? Is it in my body? Somewhere inside my physical body? Well, that's not likely. Like a surgeon could take me all apart. They'd never find it. It's not in my body. It's not in my emotions. I know that too, because my emotions are like the weather. Like they come, they go, they're cloudy, they rain. They're uncontrollable. And I know that this quiet center is not in my emotions. That's something else entirely. And I know it's not in the thinking part of me either. I mean, I think all the time. I think too much, really. And it's a dangerous place quite often to be, running around the gerbil wheel with my thoughts. And so I know it's not like the thinking part of me. Because this quiet center is available to everyone, whether they're brilliant or whether they're dull, and whether they're rational or irrational, or mentally ill or mentally sound, or whatever state you have to be in, everyone can find this place. So I know it's not there. So, the only thing left, what we're trying to find, what I'm trying to find, what I'm trying to connect with, is what we would call, for lack of a better word, my spirit. What is that, my spirit? It's something that's behind the brain, the body, the emotions. It's something that's always there. It can't be taken away from me by anybody else. And I always can have access to it if I can remember to try and do it. Now, people call this different things. They call it the spirit, the higher self, the source. My sponsor calls it the quiet center within. The unsuspected inner resource is, I think, a good one. I identify with that a little bit. But whatever you want to call it, whatever that place looks like to you, it's the way I think about it. It's the part of me that never left the heart of God. But I have to be present to find it. I have to be present to access it. I can't be off in my stories or off in crazy emotions. I have to be present. And what blocks my what blocks my access to it, this connection or my experience with Spirit, is always some type of self. It's always some type of self. We use different words for it. Our character defects, our neuroses, our stories, whatever. But they all describe some type of behavior or thinking or state of mind that's propelled by some form of self. So to clear this channel, we have to do some things. And first of all, we have to do the first 9 steps. That is the conscious process that we have for finding our way out of self, by examining what self-centeredness is and how it shows up in our lives. And that's the conscious process that we have for moving away from all of our self-centered incest. All spiritual principles, and I've been talking about them now for 10 weeks, all spiritual principles lead us out of self. That's what they are, by definition. Spiritual principles lead us out of self. So step 11 is how we learn to be present in our lives, just as we are, and with whatever's going on in our lives right now. And this step says that we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. I've been sober for a while now, and as I live sober, I'm more conscious of a desire on my part to find something more, to find something deeper, something that connects me more, something that engages my spirit, and not just the body, the brain, something that's beyond the craziness and insanity of the world that we live in, and all the senseless stupidity that we see every day when we turn on our televisions and look at our computer screens. So in step 11, we are asked to improve our conscious contact. Improve our conscious contact. Not to become God's spokesperson or interpreter here on this earth, but to become more aware of the connection that we all have with our divine, and to make a deliberate effort to grow it. That's what we're asked to do. Conscious contact, improve our conscious contact. So this step, very much like step 2, is really, really personal. Everybody has to find their own way. Other people can guide us, other people can inspire us. There's lots of literature on it, but the work, the actual work, we have to do ourselves. You know, and when I go to meetings, when you go to meetings, go to 11-step meetings, I hear people talking about the 11th step, and they're always searching for the right way, the correct method, the foolproof way, the definitive way to meditate. And I hear a lot of people feeling bad and guilty because they haven't found it. But the reason is they haven't found it because there isn't one. There isn't a foolproof method. There isn't the right method. There isn't any method that you should use. Everybody has to find their own way. It's the seeking, like step 2. It's the seeking that produces the result, not any actual goal that you get to, not the finding. The hard part is always to do the work, and we have to do the work. So the first thing that we're asked to do in this step is to pray. And so in my mind, and this is just in my mind, this is how I think about it, a useful way that I have had to simplify what these things are. For me, prayer is a conscious process, and I'm asking, usually for help, and also remembering what my source is. So prayer is asking and remembering, and for me, meditation is releasing and letting go. And so there are 2 different things that we're asked to do in this step, releasing and letting go to the quiet within. So we're asked to pray in this step, which suggested that we pray, and there are lots and lots of volumes written and many beautiful prayers that have been written for any and all occasions of life. But for me, and they are really beautiful, prayers can be very beautiful and inspiring and touching and also irritating. I've experienced them all with prayer. But to me, prayer is a conscious process. It is an inner dialogue that I have in which I remind myself as often as possible of a couple of things. And the first one is I remind myself that I'm not God because I forget. You know, when I start requiring life to be a certain way or having expectations about the way I want things or feeling bad and not even realizing it, that the reason that I feel bad is because something hasn't happened the way I have wanted it to, I need to remind myself that I'm not God. And I need to remind myself that I need help and that help is there. You know, when I got here, I thought there was no help anywhere. I thought I had to do everything by myself and for myself. I know not everyone feels that way, but I know that a lot of us feel that way because we're alone and lonely and isolated, and alcoholism really isolates people. It makes us secretive. And I just thought I had to do everything myself. It never occurred to me that I would get help anywhere. But I can remember that today when I pray. Help is there. Help is there. How does it come? I don't know. I just have to ask for it. Over the years, this dialogue that I have with prayer has become more constant. What from? What have I talked about every week for the last 10 weeks? From constant practice. From practice. From practice. And it's become very simple. It's a very simple dialogue. I say things like, thank you. I say things like, help me. I say things like, help me see this differently. I say that a lot. I say things like, relieve me from the bondage of self. They're really, really simple things. And for me, the goal of prayer is to remember my connection with God anywhere I am, in anyone I'm with, and no matter what is happening right now. That connection is always there if I can remember it. And so anybody who needs some help getting started in a prayer life just needs to take a look at the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. There are lots of instructions in the Big Book for starting a prayer life. It says that in the morning we should ask God to direct our thinking. I've found that a very helpful thing because my thinking is all over the place and it's not always generous. Let me say it that way. It's not always generous. It's often critical and derogatory and kind of manipulative. That's the kind of thinking I have. So if I could have my thinking on a higher plane, I would get a very good start. It tells us that we can divorce ourselves from self-pity, self-seeking, dishonest motives, and that throughout the day, our prayers should ask for inspiration, ask for intuition when in doubt. These are all things that we can do. Ask to be shown what the next step should be, and ask for the right thought and action. This is all from the Big Book. I think that covers pretty much anything. And then, of course, in the 12 and 12, we have that beautiful prayer, the St. Francis prayer. It is a very beautiful prayer. The thing for me to remember is that prayer is not just for disasters. When the shit hits the fan, I'll pray. Help me, get me out of this. Don't let that happen. But prayer isn't just for disaster. It's a habitual state of mind that I can cultivate by practicing. And the other thing I want to mention about prayer is something that I've learned from other people who are much more connected and much more spiritual than me. And that is prayer helps me to set an intent. And this is what I mean by that. I have a little time that I set aside in the morning to pray and meditate. And when one of the things that I do is I sit down and I think about everything that I know that I'm going to do that day. Who I'm going to meet, a task that I might have to do, responsibilities that I have, just everything that I know is going to come through my day. Now, other things may come through my day, but as I do that, I try and set an intention for each one. And it kind of goes like this. If I'm going to meet a sponsee who is really into being a victim, I try and be a little more patient. If I'm going to meet someone who talks too much and always talks about themselves, I just try and be a better listener, and I set that intention. Why don't you just listen to them more that day? Some people, I try and set an intention of telling them something positive, or whatever it is, because I know, for people I know that everybody needs something. For myself to be more patient, a better listener, any of those things. I may not remember to do them, but if I keep practicing setting an intention over a period of time, I have gotten better at it. And to me, that means I'm living my life more from the inside and not being pushed around by all the crazy emotions and stuff that pushes us around so much anymore. So step 11 says that we are to pray only for knowledge of God's will for me, not God's will for anybody else. It's kind of funny. What they're saying is, how often do I decide what I think should happen and then pray for God to do it? It sounds silly, but we all do that from time to time. And just think about how often we think that way. I think that way a lot. So the goal for me is to stop demanding reasons and answers and instead ask for guidance. And stop demanding that life be fair and instead ask to be shown where I can serve. Works out much better. And the last part of this step, we're told to pray for the power to carry it out. To me, what that means is praying for the willingness to practice the first 9 steps in my life. And this is work. This is really a lot of work. But I know that God's will always come through me when I can get myself aside by applying one of the spiritual principles of the first 9 steps. So we come now to what my sponsor calls the stepchild of the program, meditation, in the 11th step, which is, to me, releasing and letting go. There's way more talk about this step than actual practice, I have found. And it's kind of interesting to me because if somebody walked in here tonight, and there are a lot of people who've been here, been sober for a while, and they came in and they got up at the podium or the microphone went around and they said, my experience is you never really have to do step 4 to stay sober. Don't have to do it. You can skip that. You can just sort of ignore it and work on the other steps, and if you don't want to do step 4, it doesn't matter. We'd be up in arms. We all know differently. We know differently from experience. It's an essential part of our program that we learn how to look at ourselves. Well, here we are at step 11. What does it say? It says meditate. It doesn't say if you feel like it, sometimes maybe, or, when you get around to it, or, think about it, or you can skip this if you like. It doesn't say any of those things. It says to meditate. Unlike steps 4 and 5, people in the program think absolutely nothing about ignoring it entirely. So you're going to listen to me talk about it tonight. I'm going to start out with reading a little thing. I don't even know where I got it anymore. It's a question. It says, why meditate? And it's the most simple, non-secular thing I've ever read about why we should meditate. It says, we meditate to make friends with ourselves. Meditation loosens our attachment to the activities of our mind. It offers us the opportunity to put some space around our thoughts and the emotions they arouse, allowing greater access to greater wisdom and inner peace. It strengthens the part of our mind that can observe itself and brings greater appreciation for our true nature as human beings who are basically good. So who wouldn't want to do that? Who wouldn't want to do that? We're told we must do it. We must. It is a suggestion that we must do it, like all the steps. Anyway, meditation, in my limited experience, and I have some experience with it, but it's not really broad. I've just been doing the same things for a lot of years. But meditation is a habit. It's a habit in which, for a period of time, we ask our mind to focus on something. Some object, some thought, some awareness, some activity. And there are lots of ways to think about meditation. Sometimes we think about it as quieting the mind, or ignoring the chatter and the compulsive thinking, or coming into the present moment, or learning to look inside instead of outside for solutions, or finding that quiet presence in each of us, or that unsuspected inner resource. It's any and all of those things which we may experience if we try. Meditation is really hard for alcoholics. And the reason is because it requires discipline and focus. And those are two things that alcoholics lack completely. And in addition to which, the culture that we live in does not reinforce any kind of activity like this. We live in a culture of instant gratification and immediate answers. Now, there's a long human history, you can read about it in books, of contemplation, which is totally out the window when you can Google something. I mean, why would you sit around and think about anything for more than a nanosecond if you could punch it into your phone and get the answer? Or somebody's answer. Who knows where that stuff from Google comes from? I don't know. But it's like gospel now. So why would you contemplate anything if you could just like push a button and get an extra answer? I think that we really live in an ADD culture that's supported by electronics. And I like electronics. I don't think they're bad, but we are lopsided. We are out of balance. We ignore the part of the human experience that is a mystery, that doesn't have any answers, and the part of the human experience that's felt and not seen, and felt and not thought. And it's hard to do this because we actually have to make the effort. And the results that we get are completely proportionate to the effort. Most of us fail entirely to find any satisfaction whatsoever in meditation for one reason and one reason only. We quit. That's it, because we quit. So there are many, many forms of formal meditation. Visualization is one that I like. And people can contemplate. There's walking meditations. They're great. There's chanting, watching the breath, a lot more. They may be religious. They may not be religious at all. There are many, many aids to meditation. There's music. There's incense. There's guided meditations. There's lots of books. There's instructors. There's ashrams. And my advice to anyone who's never done it is to try them all. Try all of them. Try anything. Try something. And when you find something that you connect with, then do it. And do it over and over and over again till it doesn't work anymore. And then try something else. That's what mine would be. I always have to mention books on meditation because I'm so familiar with them. When early in my sobriety, whenever I went to a meditation meeting, I would get inspired to meditate. It sounded like a great thing to do. And so I would go out and buy a book on meditation, and then I would read it. And that was pretty much it. And I discovered that it is much, much easier to read a book about meditation than it is to meditate. So I acquired a very large collection of meditation books over the years, and I never actually meditated. And so I'm just pointing this out in case there's anybody else there like that. I got rid of all my meditation books, and the way I did that was every time I did an 11-step meeting, I brought a bunch of them and said, here they are, take them away if you want them. And they've all gone, and I don't buy them anymore because I would read them and instead of meditating. So that's what I have to say about books. They're not bad, but if you're like me, they're dangerous. So I just want to share a few things for anybody who is unpracticed in this discipline. I'd like to share a few things that I have found helpful over the years, and this is just me. There are as many different kinds of experience as there are people who actually have this practice. And the most important thing that I could say is, just like all the other steps, it is an habitual process. The mind likes habit. The mind really likes habit. It takes practice. The mind will eventually settle down and get quiet. For me, it's kind of like this. I have a place that I sit, and I have a time that I usually do it. In fact, my mind likes me to do it the same time every day, in the same place every day. It's kind of stupid, because if you're out of town, what are you going to do? But the mind likes habit, so I sit down and I, sit the way I sit, and I arrange things the way I arrange things, and my mind is saying stuff like this. Oh shit, she's not going to get up for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, so we might as well just get quiet. We might as well. And, and it used to take me, of the 30 minutes that I sat, or 40 or 20, it used to take half the time for my mind to do that. Now it happens pretty quickly. It's like, okay, we're not going anywhere, so you might as well just settle down. And that's what happens. The mind likes habit. That's the first thing. The second thing is that nothing happens. Nothing happens. I think a lot of us have an idea, and I know I've had it too. We would like white lights or voices or visions, because I'm into shortcuts. Why meditate for 20 years if you could just have a voice in your head, tell you where to put your money in the stock market or something like that. I'm making a little joke about it. I think there are people who do have these experiences. I have never had any of them. And if they have, I'm sure they're legitimate. And if you meet someone like that, ask them what their experience was. But nothing like that has ever happened to me. All I do is get quiet. That's it. And likewise, my experience has been there aren't any immediate results. And I'll talk about eventual results in a minute. I think I pretty quickly became a better observer of myself. And a better observer of my thoughts and emotions. But basically, there's nothing happening right away. There are lots of scientific studies, by the way, about how meditation lowers your blood pressure and speeds up healing and lowers your stress level and stuff like that. But, that's not what the STEP is asking us to do. The STEP is asking us to improve our conscious contact. So the other thing is that my mind really never ever stops. I think a lot of people, when they begin to meditate, think they have the misconception that you can get your mind to stop. I think the only thing that ever stopped my mind was a blackout, and apparently I kept on talking in that anyway. I just didn't remember it. Or maybe coma, but I think probably maybe death. My mind never ever stops. It is a gerbil wheel, and it keeps going and going and going. What I have been able to do, however, is sort of let it go, put it aside, not pay attention to it, pay attention to something else. The last thing I want to mention about meditation is it's a really good idea to have something to focus on. You can focus on an affirmation, or it's always something to come back to. I focus on my breath. That's a very traditional way of doing it. There are lots of teachers who teach it that way. That's the way I learned to do it. So, I've been working with meditation for almost 30 years, and I've had periods of real struggle, and then I've had periods of not so much struggle. What has happened to me to keep me doing it and keep me, up here at the podium of an AA meeting telling you that I think it's a good idea if you try it too. What has happened to me? Why would I bother to do that? So for me, all these years I've mostly worked with the breath because you can always come back to it. And you can only breathe for the present moment. So it really helps me to come back. I have become better at focus, and I've become better at coming back. just through practice. It's kind of like a training in not running away and a training in staying present, so that in my life, as I'm walking down the street and something disturbing happens to all of us. Maybe somebody I see, something says to me, whatever. In the middle of that, instead of running off into a defensive emotion, I can take a deep breath and bring myself right back to where I am right now. And that has come from practice. And from many years of practice, it's kind of funny. It's hard to describe what's happened to me. I feel more alive from this practice. I feel more like myself. I know that sounds funny. Maybe you know what I mean. I feel more like Nancy instead of the great pretender that I always feel like is running around in here somewhere. I feel more open. I feel like I have, from time to time, the ability to become a channel for something greater than myself. I feel like I have more intuition. I feel like I have more heart, because when I walked in here, I was all head. And I feel like I have more balance in my life. I'm a more balanced person. I think that each of these things maybe has come from trying to practice all of the steps. But for me, I think meditation has been a really important part of it. There's something here for everyone who tries, for everyone who makes even the slightest effort, who doesn't quit, or who struggles but always returns. There's something here for everyone, but everybody has to find their own way. There aren't any rules, there aren't any boundaries, there aren't any expected results, really. The work is very personal, and the way we experience this work is really personal, but we have to develop the discipline to do it. So before I leave this topic altogether, I'd like to talk about the broader idea of meditation, which I have also found in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we always often overlook it. It's really being focused on the task at hand. Like doing what I'm doing instead of multitasking, like doing 12 things badly. Being fully attentive. And some people find this in their work. Maybe you found it in your work. Some people find it in artistic expression. Some people find it in sports, like being in the zone when you just have a few moments when you're doing something better than your body's capable of doing. All those things are, I think, a kind of meditation, but there's another one that I have found here, and it is listening to another alcoholic. I have a sense of being guided. When I sit down with another alcoholic, and I don't need anything from them. I'm not looking to get anything from them, and I'm present, and I'm there, and I'm listening. I really have a sense of being guided and not controlling the result and having something better come through me. So that kind of activity can be a meditation too. So we come to the idea of being spiritual. It's kind of a funny word. We use it a lot around here, but what are we talking about? Sometimes when people talk about it, I think they're talking about being otherworldly or religious or morally superior or somehow above it all. But I don't think being spiritual is any of those things. I think that our program, when we talk about being spiritual or improving our conscious contact, what it means is developing an awareness. And what is this awareness of? As I walk through my life, I become aware of the connection between my self-centered thinking and everything that's fearful, limiting, and in turmoil. And also become aware of that connection with the divine in everything that's satisfying and peaceful and loving. And being spiritual is making the effort to get out of or beyond myself and into my spirit, and having an awareness of that. So that's the spiritual principle of the Step 11. It is awareness. It's waking up, becoming conscious, becoming present, not off somewhere else. All of our perceptions come from an awareness. And awareness is what brings about change. We come in, we get some idea of our character defects, so I can understand that I'm greedy, for example, or greedy and insensitive. And I can't just start being generous and sensitive. I have to first become aware of it and aware of how it expresses itself in my life. This is the spiritual principle of awareness. And then I have to make better decisions based on my awareness. So prayer and meditation are the practice of awareness of the presence of the divine in everyone, in every place, and in every circumstance. So, sometimes I have little quotes to end the meeting with. And you all know who Emily Post is? She was the expert on manners. She knew all that stuff. I love this quote from her. She says, "Manners are a sensitive awareness of the feelings of others." If you have that awareness, you have good manners, no matter what fork you use. So thank you for listening to me tonight.